Your Guide to Finding Secret Rooms at the Ryce Property, written by Byronius J. Do you wish to visit the Ryce Property? Surely you must by now. Whether you're looking to seek employment in an exciting new workplace, or simply to experience one of the property's famous events, there's something for everyone at the master's lavishly labyrinthian manor. As a current employee and one of the property's biggest advocates, I would normally encourage anyone to find the nearest undocumented door and leap right through. However, it is my regret to inform you that the Ryce Property is currently experiencing an internal crisis due to a sequence of events that is only partially my fault. It started when I was about to head into the foyer with a platter of food, ready to staff the master's latest event, when I saw in the corner of the kitchen two of the most senior servants having a private discussion. I could tell they were older than the norm because both of them were starting to resemble their father, the Weeping Man. Before I continue, I will note one of my relevant discoveries. Apparently, the servants are the only beings on the Ryce Property who actually age, likely because they are indirectly connected to the body of the Weeping Man, who can only maintain a certain number of them at one time. Each one will eventually die, dissolving into black goo and slithering back up into the Weeping Man's room to rejoin his body. Previously, I thought that the servants were infinitely generated, but in reality, there is a finite number of them kept in circulation to maintain the illusion of infinity. However, this doesn't change the fact that the mansion itself is indeed expanding infinitely, much akin to the universe, and with no extra servants to accommodate this extra space, it has come to my estimation that only about 1/100th of the property is actually inhabited. The rest of it consists of empty, decaying regions that I have no intention to explore. In any case, two servants of such seniority were, by some unwritten code, greatly respected by the rest of the staff at the property. They were also usually given the less tedious assignments and trusted in areas of the property that are generally off limits. I have for some time been jealous of their privileges, feeling that I myself should have acquired such privileges by now. But alas, even though it has felt like years since I first started working here, my appearance has not changed at all, and I am thus not deemed worthy of seniority. So I knew that listening in on this conversation would be one of my few chances to learn the Ryce Property's more obscure inner workings. In doing so, I overheard the mention of a room near the master bedroom that needed cleaning. I had been to the master bedroom multiple times and had never seen such a room. The two servants also mentioned something about a matchbox and an ornate hand fan. Armed with this knowledge, I went to the master bedroom at the beginning of my next break. Over time, I have learned the master's routine with such accuracy that I am able to sneak around his bedroom at certain times with confidence that I will never be caught. The matchbox in the master bedroom was one that I found on numerous occasions while rummaging through the master's drawers, despite the fact that the drawer's contents seemed to randomly shuffle with each subsequent opening. After finding the matchbox once again, I opened it to see that all but one of the matches were still in place, exactly the same as the last time I had opened it. The master never uses them, and to my knowledge, he does not smoke, so surely he wouldn't notice if just one more went missing. I looked at the candelabra resting on the master's nightstand, another familiar object that was never put to use. I wondered what would happen if I lit the candles. It oddly felt as if I had burnt my finger, despite the fact that it had not yet ignited. When I did light it, a noise like a small cut-off scream was made, and the fire was cool and transparent. I approached the candelabra and lit each of the candles in succession. The first outright refused to light. The second appeared as an ordinary flame. The third produced an extremely abnormal flame that, upon closer inspection, was actually a small, flickering loop of reality. Inside the loop, I could make out the faint details of a place I had never seen. I stuck my finger into the loop and felt the quality of the air change. It was indeed the room I had heard the servants discussing, with an entrance just as unconventional as I would expect. But to get in, I would need to make the loop bigger. I deduced that the ornate hand fan mentioned by the servants was indeed for this purpose. Unlike the matchbox, the fan was something I had never come across in the master bedroom, but it seemed to appear the moment I began to search for it. It was indeed a beautiful fan, though I could tell it was made from the feathers of the toxic peacocks that roam the Ryce Property gardens. Taking care not to touch the plumes, I fanned the flames of the candelabra and watched as the loop expanded until it was big enough to walk through. Upon stepping into the new room, which for the sake of convenience I have dubbed the Master's Study, the loop of reality closed behind me. Knowing the Ryce property, I was not concerned that I wouldn't find some other way to leave the room once I was finished investigating. Either way, the means of exiting the study did not concern me nearly as much as the nature of the study itself. Ironically, the abnormality of the study lay in its relative normality. The foreign yet strangely familiar architecture of the Ryce property was not present here. It looked like a room you might see in our world. Granted, a room from almost a century in the past, but a room from our world just the same. The floor was made from weathered oak planks that groaned subtly beneath my steps. The wallpaper was an elegant but fading green. There didn't seem to be anything actually in the study, save a crackling fireplace at the far end of the room. Slow music from another era was playing in my ears, undercut by the soft crackling characteristic of a record player. The source of the music was initially unclear. It seemed to be coming from everywhere. There were 6 tall windows in the study, 3 on each of the 2 sides perpendicular to the direction I was facing. Outside, I could make out the image of a burning building on top of a wooded hill at night. The perspective was oddly identical from all 6 windows. I walked to the end of the study, towards the fireplace, finding that the further I walked, the more cluttered the room seemed to become. By the time I finally reached the other wall, the room was congested with objects. Grandfather clocks, precarious stacks of books, heads of hunting trophies, and a large musket mounted over the fireplace. Just to name a few. Now I could see what the 2 elderly servants had meant when they said this room needed to be cleaned. There was a desk to the left of the fireplace, on which sat a record player. I deduced this was the source of music I was hearing, although the record itself didn't appear to be spinning. I lifted the needle up from the record to see what would happen. Not only did the music stop, but the entire room jolted like a car coming to an abrupt halt, sending me staggering into a pile of books. I realized that the record had not appeared to be spinning, because the entire room had been spinning around it. I got back on my feet and picked up a few objects that had fallen off the master's desk when the room had stopped. One of them was a framed photograph of a woman whom I had seen before in another portrait, where she had been standing beside the master. In this one, she was alone, and I could see sadness on her face. I picked up the glass shards that had shattered from the photo's frame, hoping the master wouldn't notice the damage. He did. A presence in the room had ignited the moment I set my hand on the glass. I didn't have to look behind me to know that the master had entered his study. He was on the far side of the room, but even from here I could tell he was not pleased. He began walking, and somehow his speed greatly exceeded the length of his strides. In that moment, I knew my career at the Ryce property had been irreversibly altered. Explaining myself to the master would do no good. So out of sheer impulse, I set the needle back onto the record, hoping the jolt of the room starting up again would disorient the master enough for me to escape. Somehow, what actually happened was both far better and far worse than my expectations. When the music returned, it was not the slow, sultry jazz, but a horrible disfigurement of twisted notes and inverted melodies. The master, who had reached just a few steps in front of me, stopped in his tracks, holding his head in agony and beginning to scream. He seemed to deform, his body oscillating between two different states, as if he was not meant to exist in this room. His mouth opened much too wide, and I can now confirm with certainty that the master does in fact have fangs. Between the din of the anti-music and the master's screams, I almost forgot that I had been given a prime opportunity to leave the study unharmed. The loop of reality through which the master had entered was still open. I ran past the master, who was still clutching himself in pain. I ran across the room and jumped through the loop. Back into the master bedroom. I took the candelabra and smashed it against the floor, destroying the entrance to the study. I felt safe in the master bedroom, with nothing keeping me company but the sound of my own slowing heartbeat. That was when the lights went out. Not just the chandeliers, not just the gas lamps, not just the candles. Even the ambient light outside in the courtyard was snuffed out. It was as if the entire property had gone into lockdown mode. No, I didn't go blind. I can still see the light produced by my phone. Although the surrounding area is so impossibly dark that my flashlight function is virtually useless. I'm sure the master is fine. This unprecedented darkness is simply a side effect of his sudden absence from the property. I know he will find a way out of the room in which I trapped him. However, I do not intend to stick around once that happens. It is now in my best interest to exit the Ryce property in a calm and timely fashion. And sitting in a dark corner with my phone isn't doing me any favors. The exit in the master bedroom seems too obvious and is almost certainly a trap. There must be another way out. My career as a servant is over, and my time at the Ryce property has nearly come to an end. But evidently, the lure of the enigmatic manor still has things in store for me yet.